the baby. Or sometimes him with a capital H. These huge proper nouns to illustrate how completely he took over my life. Was he eating? Not eating? Pooping? Not pooping? How long ago was the poop? What color was the poop? Did I mark the poop on the spreadsheet? I had spreadsheets. I had stuff. White noise CDs and magnetic blocks and a super high-tech video monitor with a remote wireless screen and night vision. It was a little unnerving, actually. It had 2 channels, an A channel and a B channel, in case you had 2 kids in separate rooms. And what's interesting about this is that one of my neighbors must have owned this exact same monitor. Because on channel A, I saw my baby, and on channel B, I saw someone else's baby. And if someone else could see my baby, who knows what might happen. Now, at the time, we lived in a 3rd floor walk-up in Uptown, surrounded by other 3rd floor walk-ups. Jumping onto a neighbor's Wi-Fi signal wasn't that much of a stretch, so perhaps the fact that I could toggle between babies shouldn't have been so surprising, but it was. It was huge. I was obsessed. On one hand, it's totally, completely creepy, stalking even. But on the other hand, it was kind of magical, like CB radios when you're a kid. Connecting with someone across the void, adding your voice to the collective unconscious, feeling less alone in this crazy world, and who knows who might be listening? Who knows who's in that uptown condo on channel B? A baby, to be sure. But it wasn't the baby I was obsessed with. It was the mother. My imagination went wild when I thought of her. Did she sit there, watching my kid in the dark? Did she question his bedtime? Did she wonder where I got his pajamas? How might she react if I put a big sign in his crib that read, "Stop looking at my baby, you dirty voyeur"? Or what if the sign read, "Yay, new friends, do you want to meet up at the park?" Or what if it told the truth? I am terrified. I'm sometimes so terrified I can't even breathe. Now, any winter in Chicago is a force to be reckoned with, but 2008 was particularly awful. The baby was born 3 weeks early, middle of the night, middle of a snowstorm. My husband had to dig out our car, shovel the entire alley, and navigate Lakeshore Drive through a whiteout blizzard, and that pounding, relentless snow carried January, February, March, and into April. At the time, I was a part-time college teacher, no paid leave. And since I'd taken the winter off to be with the baby, my husband, a web designer, picked up extra shifts to cover the difference. The baby and I were alone, for the most part. Completely and totally alone. In our uptown condo, the outside of which I thought was the ice planet of Hoth. Are you familiar with Planet Hoth? Empire Strikes Back? Luke almost freezes to death and then Han sticks him inside of a dead tauntaun for body warmth? That Hoth. And yes, I joke about it now, but the truth is I was scared to go outside. The baby might freeze. And I was scared to go to sleep. The baby might suffocate. And I was scared that he wasn't eating, wasn't latching, wasn't gaining, wasn't doing what the books had said he would do. And one night, after a particularly awful bout of crying, I looked in the mirror and I did not recognize the woman looking back. I was unbrushed, unwashed, wearing the same pair of yoga pants day after day. We all have things about ourselves that we know to be true. And I didn't remember any of them. I couldn't write. I couldn't laugh. I couldn't even see myself. At the time, my understanding of postpartum depression was primarily shaped by Brooke Shields' memoir, Down Came the Rain, which is about crippling depression and suicidal thoughts. But since what I was experiencing, while heavy, wasn't that heavy. And dark, but not really that dark. And scary, but not, you know, like that. It didn't occur to me to ask for help. I wasn't going to hurt my kid. I wasn't going to hurt myself. Right? Now, I know that the symptoms and intensity of postpartum depression are as varied as the flowers in the greenhouse, and I wish I had told someone. I didn't need to be that alone. Just me in the frozen Chicago winter and my tiny, fragile baby and Channel B. Whenever the baby would fall asleep, I would watch his day-glow body on the monitor, making sure he wasn't choking or levitating or exploding or whatever crazy things I was imagining at the time. And then, once assured of his safety, I would flip the channel to see how that other mother was doing. I bet her kid was eating. I bet she changed clothes occasionally. I bet for her, snow wasn't some terrifying apocalypse, but rather a walking in a winter wonderland sprinkling of picturesque little flakes. And yes, I know, this was completely intrusive and unethical. And above all else, ridiculous. Why was I comparing myself to this woman? I never even saw her. Mostly there was just an empty crib. Sometimes there was a baby in it. But for the most part, the mother was a complete non-entity. Until one night, I flipped over to Channel B and heard crying. It wasn't from the baby. He was fast asleep, an angel. But somewhere in that room, a woman was crying. Heavy, gaspy sobs. I shouldn't have listened. But it was the first time since my son was born that I didn't feel alone. It took me 4 years to tie the words post and partum and depression together. 4 years to write them down on a piece of paper, to put them outside of myself so I could see what I was dealing with. 4 years to tell this story. The first time I told it was to a group of moms from my son's preschool over a glass of wine or 2 or 5. The second time was in front of a couple hundred strangers for a performance series I work with called Second Story. From there, it has been published online, anthologized, in magazines and radio in the US and abroad, and every time it steps out into the world, I get emails. Some are from women who've recently had children and are there now in the thick of it. Others from women who've been there before but remember that feeling in their bones. Others from the partners, family, and friends who love these women and are trying to understand what they're going through. Others from postpartum support centers and hotlines. Still others from people who haven't experienced postpartum specifically but are trying to climb up and out of other forms of depression. Their stories gut me and they move me. I didn't know how desperately I needed them. This is the momentum of the shared experience. You write it, draw it, film it, dance it, put it out into the world and watch it fly, screen to screen, stage to stage, heart to heart, till it finds the person who needs it the most. There are women out there watching me through words on a page, chicken scratches on a piece of paper, the exact same way I watch that other mother on the monitor. All of us are reaching out across the void. All of us are trying to survive. Now, the means and methods to fight depression are as varied as the flowers in the greenhouse. Medication, therapy, support groups, art, screaming, laughing, kickboxing the mother-loving hell out of the demons in our midst, and a million others. But for me, the big one was spring. Birds, green things, grilling on the porch, short skirts, outdoor seating, lemonade, which I know you can get any time of the year, but it always tastes better in the summer. My God, the sun. How desperately I needed it. And I wager as Chicagoans, we all feel this way in the spring. But for me, May 2008 was a godsend. This giant hand reaching down out of the clouds and pulling me to my feet. In May, the baby became Caleb, smiling, laughing, 4 months old and learning about the world outside my lap. I would strap him in a backpack and we would walk through Uptown, finding magic in everyday things. Plastic grocery bags, amazing. Tapping a glass with a spoon, kick ass. Water in a dish, fun for hours. And one morning he reached for a yellow street cleaning sign, stapled to a tree, and all of a sudden I saw yellow as though I had been blind to it for years. Brake lights, parking lights, taxis, more taxis, and in that moment we passed a woman with a stroller. She was pretty, early 30s, wearing yoga pants. She looked nice and tired and interesting. Like there were all sorts of secret things about her that had been set on pause for the time being. She looked like how I saw myself. We nodded at each other in solidarity. This, I had newly discovered, is the way that new moms do it. Acknowledging the fact that even though you know each other, you're still a part of this huge, cosmic team. And then after that, you check out one another's kids. Hers was grabbing his toes in the stroller. So sweet, so adorable, so familiar. And not in that all babies look exactly alike sort of a way. I looked closer. I knew that kid. And suddenly I saw him not face-to-face on Lawrence Avenue, but electric green on a tiny handheld screen. I looked back up at the mother. You know, I started and then I stopped because really, what would I have said? Stop looking at my baby! Do you want to meet up at the park? What about the truth? Your baby is beautiful, she said. So's yours, I said. We stood there. We stood there long past what is appropriate for strangers. I like to think it's because she was thinking the same thing I was. That maybe she too had flipped channels in the middle of the night, trying to connect with someone across the void or feel less alone in this crazy world. Or maybe she overheard me crying in Caleb's bedroom months ago when everything still seemed so impossible. How are you? I asked her, and I wasn't just asking, I really, really needed to know. She smiled. I'm getting better. Me too, I said. I'm getting better. It was something about myself that I knew was true.